Power up. Welcome to Energypreneurs, where I bring to you the exciting new opportunities in solar power, battery, and electric cars. I'm your host, Sohail Hasni. I've been tracking and analyzing these technologies on LinkedIn and Twitter for more than 10 years. Now we meet on podcast.
Sebastian, finally, it's great to see you. And we communicated a lot, but never, I don't think, see us in 2D at least. So maybe let's me start by asking you to introduce. You are a very bright entrepreneur, solar entrepreneur in Bangladesh, no?
Well, I'm an entrepreneur in Bangladesh that I can definitely sign. The rest is to be judged or to be seen. Yeah, my name is Sebastian Groh. I'm originally from Germany. I studied first. I was an investment banker, kind of, or not an investment banker, but on the verge of becoming one, doing my internships there and my limited employment. That was all pre-Lehman, and then there came, for me, in like retrospectively, it's always easy to paint the way or to describe it, right? But there was a key event at my university which was called Doing Business with the Poor.
Mm-hmm.
That was in, I think, like in 2007 or 8, and it was quite controversial then. This was the time when Dambisa Moyo published a book, Debt Aid, where it was put into action how effective development aid is. I mean, Sohail, you know all this. It's a long, bloody road and debate. But I was intrigued, and so I went, and then I decided that in the next semester break I would not return to the trading floor, which was a good decision because Lehman collapsed then. But instead do something different, which was one of the panelists there. His name was Daniel Phillip. He worked for a company called Micro Energy International. And he actually in 2001, I believe, went to Bangladesh for his diploma thesis. And so that was before ITCOL went into the solar home system program in Bangladesh, which really then accelerated and boosted this whole undertaking. And before your organization and many of the others, propelled this whole program. And he visited Grameen and especially Grameen Shakti, and found a couple thousand solar home systems installed and was very amazed. And then his thesis showed a graph how it could grow. He doesn't have the hockey stick, which it actually happened in the case of Grameen Shakti, but he already said this is fascinating, and was so fascinating that he founded this company, Micro Energy International. And there I did an internship. And in the first week I had to go to Peru with my little Spanish and had to present at a microfinance conference, the biggest microfinance conference called Forumic in Latin America, on the topic of why should microfinance institutions do energy projects or have energy solutions in their portfolio. And the rationale was kind of to say, okay, look, people spend substantial amounts for energy resources. Nobody lives in darkness. This is a myth, right? Everybody has a candle, a kerosene lamp. Nobody lives in complete darkness. So whenever you have something, you spend money. And also it was clear that a lot of their portfolio went sour when people got sick. And health and energy is closely related. So the pitch we try to make is, look, if you offer your clientele better energy solutions, you catch 2 flies with 1 stone. You have a healthier clientele, which means less default risk, and also they will save energy or cost for energy, sorry. And so again, they will be more able to pay back their loans. Maybe they can even use it productively and so forth. So that was the early days of what we call then green microfinance. Grameen Shakti obviously had already done that, but they had it separated from the Grameen Bank. So this is how I got into all this, and was my first touch point with Bangladesh. And then I embarked on my PhD myself, and I wanted to get into Stanford University. But for that, I had to pretend to be an entrepreneur and had to, you have all these interviews, and I had to say what's my business idea and how do I want to start my company. I didn't want to start my company. I just wanted to get it to Stanford. That was the whole point. So, but then I said, okay, there were these by then millions of solar homes, not thousands anymore. By then it was really in the millions. That was 2013, if we recall. That was the time when the peak of the solar home system program in Bangladesh. I think in 1 month in November 2013, 80 or 85,000 solar home systems were sold in a single month, which is like massive. And then, so the idea I pitched to Stanford that I will create an enterprise which will use those solar home systems to put them together so that the people who don't have one also get energy. Very simple idea. But they liked it, and I got into the program, which was in the summer of 2013. So I was in the US then, and they did a really good job because the pretending entrepreneur turned into a real entrepreneur. And in January 2014, I landed in Bangladesh. I stop here, so otherwise this becomes an incredibly too long monologue. But that's the short life story how I ended up in 2014 in Bangladesh.
Oh, fantastic. So, because Bangladesh at that time, I think when the period that you mentioned, and this is when Al Gore mentioned the Bangladesh solar home system in his speech, right? That also get it global attention, right?
Yes, I mean, obviously it was the Nobel Prize for Muhammad Yunus for microcredit, and then this mentioning of Al Gore and many others, which attracted me. And I was like, look, back then in 2014, like in this peak time, there were probably about 4 million solar home systems on the whole planet, and 3 were from Bangladesh. And I was like, how did one country install more than all other countries on the planet combined? There's some magic. So that was the curiosity idea why I really came and wanted to find that out, finish my PhD, and at the same time, what I said before, I was converted into an entrepreneur, try to set up a company which leverages the success.
So where are you now with your company in Bangladesh? I mean, this is 7 years down the track, 2014, this is 2021, and then
yes.
So,
time flies, as we know, and things are always harder than what you initially think. But we fought our way through. We installed the first, what is today known as a solar peer-to-peer grid, and it happened to be the first in the world. We installed it in November 2015. Today, actually next week, hopefully, we will celebrate our 100th grid. And we are by now in every single district of the country. And as we speak now, we are at 97, but we are hopeful that by next week, we will close the century, as you say.
So can you explain this peer-to-peer grid a bit more?
Sure. So in the simplest terms, when I went into the villages, into the houses, I saw always the same thing. In the afternoon at 2-3 p.m., the battery was always full. And the notion was, okay, look, the next 3-4 hours, the sun continues shining, right? So what happens with all? So that was booked under waste or excess energy, which couldn't be stored. Then, being an economist and not an engineer, I said, buy a bigger battery. A simple solution, right? And then I learned that this is a terrible idea, because if you buy a bigger battery in the rainy season, you never fully charge it, and it's a lead acid battery. And then if you never fully charge that for a longer time period, it will sulfatate. Long story short, the battery will stop functioning properly. So I said, okay, so no bigger battery, buy a second battery. Then I learned from the engineers again, terrible idea. If you buy a second battery and connect it to the first one, the level of working of the battery will be as good as the older one. So it would not be a wise investment. Then what I did in 2013 when I was in in Palo Alto or in San Francisco, I had my first Uber ride, which was then coined as the sharing economy. And I was like, hang on, the Uber ride, the sharing economy is about how can I leverage or make use of underutilized assets. This is an underutilized asset. It's not a car, but it's a battery. And the house next door doesn't have anything. She has no solar home system, and obviously no connection to the national grid. That wasn't there then. So if that battery is full, shouldn't that battery automatically start sending electricity to that house next door where the people don't have anything? Makes intuitive sense. From an economist perspective, the rate at what to send the electricity should either be for free, because my battery is any full, I can't use it, or it could be a minimal amount. But yeah, that didn't work. So SOLshare, sharing economy, as we have learned, has very little to do with sharing. It's actually all about selling. So, and also that our feedback we did some focus group discussions, and nobody wanted to give electricity away for free, which is understandable, right? So we said, okay, then we fix a price, and whenever you sell, then you get that money. And we didn't invent that. They did this before. Before, they would already throw cables. They would look in the evening, how many hours of light would that person have? Next morning, there would come 3 hours of light, 15 taka. All we did is basically systematize this and put it on a platform. We hooked it up with a second world record, which Bangladesh has, the biggest mobile money platform in the world with Bcash and Nogod and others. So what your meter shows you, in our case, is not kilowatt hours, but taka, so in money terms. And that one is connected then through an IoT device with your mobile money wallet, which means whenever you sell, you get the money on your phone, onto your wallet, and you can buy your rice or whatever you need in the next store with the money you earn through your solar system. And that suddenly was really, I think that was fascinating, because I can't do that in Germany. I can't do that in the US. I can't do that anywhere. Real-time money from selling electricity to your neighbor, all automated. And this is what we then said, okay, that was then the final breakthrough for this first peer-to-peer grid, which we installed. So this is how it works. And then the idea was, a solar home system by definition has certain restrictions in terms of what you can run with it. It has limited capacity. It's not like a plug, like we know it, that whatever you plug in and electricity always comes unless there's a brownout or a blackout. So the idea was, if I put 1 and 1 together, I want to get more than the sum of the parts. So I want to get the power of 3 solar home systems through a synergy effect. And so it's a network effect. So the more people join the grid, the more powerful it gets, and the more powerful appliances we then can run. And that led to a cycle of development within SOLshare, where we try to make it more powerful, where we try to step up the voltage so that we can exchange more electricity between the nodes, can run also AC loads, because it's all beautiful with these direct current loads, but those direct current loads at the end of the day are not available, or at least not at a cost point where the people could afford it. So from an engineering perspective, I think our system has been really beautiful, but from a practical perspective, we needed to make some changes to make it more workable for the people. And that was then the developments which were started.
Okay, so that's very interesting. So how high the voltage is now when you are connected? Just describe your microgrid. Is it a cluster of 10 homes now or less? How large are these communities?
So we don't do grids below 20 usually, because you really need some diversification effect. If everybody has the battery full at the same time, and everybody has the same job, comes back home at 6, then you want diversification. You want a few shops, maybe even a school. Then you want a couple of households, and so ideally, I mean, minimum 20. And we haven't reached an upper limit yet, where we say, okay, now the peer-to-peer network fails because there are too many nodes. not even theoretically in our calculations, but at the same time, we have a very strong restriction on distance. So we need to find a sufficient number of houses or settlements which are close together, because we did start out with 12 volts. And as you know, Sohail has a lot of losses, but then whenever I speak to engineers, that the losses is one thing. The other thing is the cost per meter of cable. Before I get in trouble that basically only 50% what I'm sending reaches the neighbor, I have a problem with my unit economics in terms of costs for the cabling. Because the big difference to the Ubers of this world is that the Ubers have a very big subsidy, which is called paved roads. We don't have that. In the off-grid area, we have to put the cables ourselves, and that weighs heavy on the unit economics model. So we started out with 12 volts. Then we did some experimentation with 48 volts, even installed two 48-volt grids in Assam, in the neighboring state from India. Then we went to 120 volts. And then we found that this becomes, from an engineering perspective, very challenging. We need to put a DC-DC converter into our box. We wanted to get to 1 kilowatt, 1.2 even, that we can trade. And there, we developed a prototype, and it's not yet in the field. It's lab. It's still on the bench, and it took us a lot of iteration steps. So a lot of complications on the ways, a lot of burned PCBs.
Okay, so I'm just trying to understand. This individual household has solar panel, like a 300-watt solar panel, or larger?
Smaller even. So what we have, the average solar home system size in Bangladesh on the program of ITCOL is 50-watt peak. So you have some which are 80 or 100, but yeah.
Yeah, and you have a very tiny 50 ampere hour battery or 100 ampere hour battery?
Usually it's more or less the factor 1.5. So 50-watt peak would come with a 70, 80 amp hour battery. What we do is we put micro utilities at strategic nodes, which then have a higher capacity, maybe 250-watt peak, also with batteries, in order to facilitate the trading. Because we all know that experience. We want to hire an Uber, no car available. We do that 3 times, and then we delete the app and say no more. Same for our people. If I run out of electricity because I have a birthday party and I want to buy and nobody sells to me, no, this doesn't work. Right? Same thing.
Because I'm just thinking, the cable issue that you mentioned, because you went to AC, saying the Tesla debate, AC and DC debate from many years ago, right? And
well, we still distribute the cables are still DC, right? So we're not trading on AC. That would be a different story altogether.
You are breaching all the distribution codes if you trade on DC,
yes,
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then, of course, the issue of the safety and electric shock and all of those things comes in. Because I'm just thinking, because it's a lead acid, when the technology leapfrogging happened, when people go into lithium batteries, I mean, technically, you can put on a drone a 1 kilowatt hour lithium battery and just move it around, right?
Yeah.
That's very. But with a highway, no? If you put a lithium battery, it lifts it up and charges, you can have a fantastic distribution network.
We're trying to do this on Earth. I mean, on Earth, meaning the vehicle of mobility is not a drone, but it's a rickshaw.
Yeah, so, I know, but I'm saying you can ultimately automate, because as the prices become cheaper, because I have seen, and now I have a fan with a built-in lithium-ion battery. So it gets charged, and I move around into the entire house. I've seen, of course, televisions. I've seen fridges. So many of your appliances.
You move with your fridge in the house?
No, I've seen fridges, but I'm saying the ability to move it around.
Yes.
That might change your peer-to-peer grid to a very different, amazing level once you go into super efficient DC appliances. Because when you started, you said the DC appliances were not there, no? Are you getting into that field? Why not?
So to be honest, it's difficult for a smaller company to tap its hands into too many pots, right? So the whole ecosystem, we cannot manage supply chain for appliances, supply chain for PV and storage, organize the whole trading. And so we're doing it through a partnership approach, right? So at the end of the day, SOLshare is an energy tech company, which means we provide a software as a service which organizes the trading of this and also organizes the settlement. But we do go into new directions. As you've probably heard, Bangladesh has made tremendous progress on grid electrification. The official numbers now are anywhere between 99 and 100%, if we follow the ministry's announcements. And it's true that among the 100 grids, we have about a third or so which have been electrified. So it's not really 100%, but it's been progressing. So our market there, the pure off-grid market, is shrinking more and more. So our reaction was, okay, then let's do something. The people have their solar home systems. There's 6 million solar home systems in Bangladesh. So it would be a waste if those systems would only be used for an hour a day when the national grid is down. But then we said, look, I cannot really connect a solar home system to the national grid because then you will need an inverter, as you know, and that will be so expensive. It doesn't make sense because the panel is so small and whatnot. So we started to group them together as before. And then for the national grid, it's basically one customer. So a group of 100 houses is one node. And let's say these 100 houses, each with 50 watt peak. So you have like 5 kilowatts. Now you're coming something which is more interesting. So 5 kilowatt is connected to the national grid, and the accounting how many watts came from which house, we can all do through our IoT devices. So we told it to the government and they said, okay. And then we net meter that. And I was like, well, these are, poor households with storage and 100% clean electricity. Do you really think you should give them a taka? Okay, let's test it. So we got what you call today a regulatory sandbox. So next month, actually end of this month or end of November, beginning of December, we will hook up the first of our grids to the national grid and have a bi-directional feed in. What we would like to see is, first of all, can those people make a decent additional revenue through their stranded assets, I would say. But secondly, also, if I have 100 houses, all with an 80 amp hour battery, which is still functioning, could this distributed storage be leveraged so that the grid works a little bit better, gets a little bit more stabilized? We don't know, but we're trying. We'll testing it, and then we will extrapolate the exercise. So that's something which is right now in the pipeline, which I think is very interesting. On the DC appliances, to be honest, I don't see them here. You see, everything works which is available in the local market. They are not there, and even here in Purandaka in the market, we hardly see those things, like fridges, like especially a little bit higher appliances. Would love to include them, would work much better with our grids, but we don't really see an active supply chain there so far.
Because these things are quite easy to make. In fact, all television, as you know, these are run on transistor. These are all DCs, right? So
all laptops are DC. Yeah.
So all of those things.
All phones.
You just need to get rid of the power cord somehow, and all LEDs are also DC, right? So just someone needs to.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
Simply.
So lights is an exception. Lights is everything is as DC in our grids. I mean, we hardly see any AC lights. That's an exception, definitely. Yeah.
And the fans also, you see mostly AC fans or DC fans?
Mostly AC fans. It's also because it's a game of numbers, right? It's economies of scale. If I buy an AC fridge, I pay 20,000 taka. And if that's a DC fridge with the same capacity, I pay 2 times that much. So
Yeah.
it's also to do with import, and there's a lot of with the import taxes and so forth. So there's a lot of things attached to that.
Yeah, I'll connect you with Energy Pack. I'm sure you know them. One of our friend, he was saying they are doing a DC fan. He actually showed me a few years back when I was in Dhaka, 38-watt DC ceiling fan, super efficient. So I'll connect you. I think that may be something.
Sure. Yeah.
Check.
Would
Okay,
would that be
fantastic.
Mr. Akhtar probably then?
Yes,
from
yes,
Energy Pack?
Akhtar.
Yes. Yeah.
So you have done all these things that has a tremendous value when it goes to global scale. No, Bangladesh has electrified significantly. It can now only help. This can help to better functioning of the grid, improve the reliability of the grid, and Bangladesh, the highest population concentration. So if you take that technology, go to more dispersed population in other part of the world, right? This off-grid or a cluster of people in the mountain, the ball somewhere, or Bhutan, and there's no one other. So are you doing that thing internationally?
We started in India, as I said, but then COVID came, and we basically literally weren't allowed to enter the country for almost 2 years. So now, COVID was a time of reflection also. And I think many companies looked and refined their strategy, transformed their strategies, and we were no exception there. So we said, okay, we have to take a decision now. Do we want to go wide, meaning adopt this in as many countries as possible? And we're getting a lot of requests, right? For can you do that there and there and there? Or do we want to go deep and really leverage the social capital we have now here in Bangladesh? And what happened is that in a lot of our grids, these electric rickshaws were driving through. And I was like, always lead acid batteries. And I was like, see, I understand the lead acid battery in Bangladesh in the Solar Homestead program has been a tremendous success. Warranty of 5 years. We have batteries in grids which are 7, 8 years old and so forth. But for those vehicles, they are really bad. I mean, they get a warranty of 6 months or nothing, and they break after.
When you're running electric car, you draw in much more.
Exactly, it's the usage pattern, but also I opened the batteries after a year of usage. It's always shaking, and this is very, very different. So there are, you probably know that, anywhere between 1.5 and 2 million local Teslas. Let's use it like this so people realize these are electric vehicles. And the people who buy those batteries or lease them rather or buy them on credit, they pay up to 360% interest on those batteries for those vehicles, which is, I mean, and they might not pay them directly always to the garage owner. They may take the money from somewhere else, but that's what we found with hundreds of drivers. So we have been looking at this for the last 12 months very, very, very closely.
So are you going to battery leasing? That would be fantastic.
Yes, we've already started. Okay. So we took the pay-as-you-go technology, put it into a lithium battery, trying to set up a robust supply chain there, which is not easy in these days, robust supply chains, especially for lithium batteries, but we're making good progress. We have the first vehicles on the road. We own 5 charging stations by now, really to understand how this works. And the goal is in the next couple of years, by 2025, to have 100,000 vehicles on the road with lithium batteries, with pay-as-you-go functionality, where I can track the vehicle, I can securitize all those assets because I have full insight how they are being used, how much revenue they make, and get financing in place for that. But we don't want to stop there. We also in Rajshahi, as you probably know, the green city of Bangladesh, which had this tremendous success in bringing down air pollution. We are backed by the city council, by the mayor panel, to put solar PV on a roof of those garages. Because we always talk about electrification of transport as a medium to fight climate change. And I said, well, hang on, the grid in Bangladesh is what, 97% coal and gas based to date. So if I put this into this electric vehicle, yeah, I don't have the tailpipe emissions, I admit, but it's
I mean,
hardly
still
clean.
better. I mean,
Yeah.
still better.
Still better, still better.
Still
No,
better
but
than
so
what it is. Yeah.
rooftop solar has become so competitive in
Mhm.
Bangladesh that I can put it on those garages. I put it under the net metering. I'm not claiming that I generate everything and put it into those batteries in this leasing model. That would be, but I put it under the net metering policy, which means the meters will run backwards for those garages. The biggest expense of a garage, which is charging, is the electricity bill. So that can have a big impact. There are some downsides. If you put rooftop solar onto, let's say, a garment factory, you pay like 2 taka a watt peak for the construction on the roof. On a garage, it's a little more shaky. So you need a lot more stabilization. It's more like 10 taka per watt peak. So the economics are not quite as good yet, but we will get support for this. We'll try to bridge that gap. And there are anywhere between 10 and 15,000 garages right now in Bangladesh throughout the country. So the big goal is, let's get the PV as a business case onto those garages and replicate this throughout the country. And then we really have a green infrastructure and these vehicles with the lithium batteries that could change the whole transportation backbone of the country. And all this, Sohail, I'm telling you to say that's why we stay in Bangladesh right now.
No. This is
Because it's
I know quite a number of people who are trying to establish a lithium factory in Bangladesh, and then
please introduce me.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I
because
can introduce you
yeah,
to a number of people who are precisely looking at this challenge of 2 million or more tricycles that are using lead acid batteries. I know someone in China who was in this podcast platform who will be more than happy to work with you and help you develop your own battery pack. So they give you the cell so that you can assemble the battery pack. No, I'm definitely more than happy to introduce. This is fantastic. And then once you have a battery swapping business, then sky's the limit, no?
It doesn't really need to be swapping. I mean, we looked at how those drivers operate. They come at 6 a.m. to the station, and then they drive till 2 p.m. And then they have their lunch break. And that's actually like 3 hours. It's like a siesta almost. In that 3 hours, I can charge the battery 50%, a lithium battery. A lead battery, I can't do anything. I mean, hardly anything. Lithium battery, I can charge like 50%. And that means also the capacity of the battery doesn't need to last for the whole day. It only needs to last for half a day.
No, the reason I'm saying swapping, it's sort of, that you can get these days hard disk that you can slot it in. So if you start establishing a standard, so people might just take a battery that's charging and tomorrow take it and home. Somebody has a birthday party, grab 3. So you sort of can establish a pseudo standard in the areas that you are in, because I'm sure government
and have multiple uses, right?
Yeah, because once you have a standardized battery, kilowatt is a kilowatt hour. I mean, you can run an electric boat, electric bike, electric drone, home electricity, karaoke, whatever, television, because it's a kilowatt hour. So you can create a product that might have universal demand.
Right. Yeah.
Fantastic. So is that the vision of the company in the next 5 years? Is it 25?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are going more and more into this field. Obviously, we're not starting from scratch. I mean, everything we learned on battery technology, on distributed energy, we just take the pay-as-you-go module and put it into the lithium battery, right? So we're building on that. We're continuing with the grids, of course, but I see this as a gigantic opportunity. And if we go even further into the future, that's what I said before. We have moving storage between the districts or within the districts between the villages. We'll have PV on the roof of those garages. So the peer-to-peer will not be that far, even between the vehicles. So it's kind of for us, it's kind of a transformation, but also an evolution of how to, of the use case of the peer-to-peer technology.
Yeah. I mean, then you have a floating solar, small scale. You can have those very super thin solar panel that I think CSIRO in Australia was showcasing last week. So you can just almost like a put on the top of any sheds, right? It won't be your 38% efficiency, but so it is. It's so cheap.
Yeah. If it gets so cheap, you can put it on all of the vehicles.
You can print them locally, so you don't have to bring from anywhere else, right? Oh, fantastic. What keeps you awake at night? You have so many things, no?
Yeah, I mean, I always say it always sounds, everything sounds easy and straightforward, but we all know being a social entrepreneur usually means 90% pain and 10% happiness. And I think we are no exception there. It's always a daily struggle with with everything at the end of the day. Nothing comes for free, nothing comes easy.
Yeah, of course. So how large is SOLshare? You are the CEO, right?
That's right, yeah. So we are 50 plus people. We're all here based out of Dhaka. That's a decision we took a couple of years ago. We said, if you want to work for SOLshare, your center of life needs to be Bangladesh. Otherwise, it's not happening. And I think that was an important decision. It obviously we lost a few good people, but I just saw the example of other companies where then part of the team is living in Dhaka and another part maybe living in, I don't know, in Berlin, and that leads to friction. That leads to different standards of life. That also leads to different needs in terms of remuneration and so forth. So we said, no, we don't want that. We are a Bangladeshi company, so you are here.
Okay, so and you are of course a German national, right?
Yes.
So, how many other expats are in your company?
We are three expats, and so we're three Germans who are considered the co-founders. By now we have basically a strong director team, which is 6 people, and the other 3. This is something you achieve over time, right? To attract very good talent, but also some seniority, right? So we are happy to have 3 very strong directors now who lead operations, product development, as well as engineering. So that's been a big win to get those people on board. Because in the beginning you are 3 Germans and you are just considered lunatics, right? Yeah.
Do you speak Bangla yet?
My wife is from here, and I usually don't admit it, but I understand quite a bit, and I'm a little bit shy as a German perfectionist in speaking, because you know how we are. We only speak when we know it's perfect. So, which is the biggest hurdle to learning. So,
okay,
but yeah, I do.
So, and then setting up in Bangladesh and working as a foreign company has not been that much of a challenge, or it is?
It's been a mixed bag. It comes with its advantages in terms of, obviously we have a different reach and access to the international community in terms of support, attracting funding and so forth. But it also comes with its bag of disadvantages. Like, I made a huge mistake when I registered SOLshare. It was just me, right? So I put my picture on the application, and then after 6 months, I said, like, what's happening? Oh, yeah, this is the Bideshi, no, it's the foreigner. And then I went to the ministry, and my file was somewhere at the bottom. And he said, oh, if that file needs to go up, then you need to do something. I said, what do I need to do? And I didn't understand anything, right? So it took me 18 months to get all the papers in order, bank account, trade license, incorporation certificate. And then, so I started in 2014 with this process, and I got it all done by the end of 2015. In Singapore, I also incorporated because I knew I need this entity there for the money transfers, and it took 3 hours. So 18 months versus 3 hours speaks a bit of a language. I mean, we're not talking about doing business index anymore because I've been told this is out of vogue. Has been discontinued, that report, but I mean that speaks a language. But it has also been a learning experience when you don't pay a single taka of speed money, what that means to get things done. But it's possible.
But so far it has worked out well then, it seems, no? Because Bangladesh government is quite gung-ho now in terms of rural electrification and the investment that are coming in. So what's your scale-up plan? Are you going to...
also in terms of entrepreneurship,
yeah,
what happened here in the last 5 years is tremendous in terms of startup culture, ecosystem. The ICT ministry plays a strong role there. So that's been really boosting. And once you get a couple of startups attracting considerable amounts of money from foreign investors, then the whole group of startups benefits. Sorry, but you were...
No. This is fantastic. So the whole psyche, because I left Dhaka in 1986, so I know very little of Bangladesh as it is now. So a lot of our friends are senior ministers and chief engineers and others. But when I talk to, I see that really the whole psyche supporting startup and things has dramatically changed. No, you must see that on the ground, right?
Absolutely. I mean, when I came to, I was lucky because these last 7 years was really where it went from the ashes to like the phoenix. I mean, it's been really marvelous to observe just what happened in terms of startups coming. I mean, in the beginning, the word startup wasn't even known. I mean, there's no Bangla word for startup, right? That's where it already starts. And if you wanted to hire someone, that was not good. And I'll use a very local term. It's not good marriage material to work in a startup. It's not safe. It's not good. And that has changed. And that's, I mean, Bcash, if you want to say, is the first startup in Bangladesh that it became $1 billion company, right? Probably. So not sure they are really $1 billion, but probably close towards. So that was the exception, but now it becomes more and more with other like ShopUp, like recently raised $70-80 million. So that base.
Fantastic. So Sebastian, you the accidental entrepreneur. What's your advice for wannabe entrepreneurs who wants to be into this space? What you tell them? Who wants to do something like you, climate change?
I think two things, just to be realistic, what you're getting yourself into. 9% pain, 10% happiness is a joke. You have to be really resilient and stupid to do this. Otherwise, it's very, very tough. And I think the deceiving point is when you listen to entrepreneurs, it all sounds so straight, but in all our lives we can tell in a straight line, right? But in reality it went like this, right? And I think don't be deceived by those stories, and don't look too much towards success. Often it's more interesting to look at failure because you learn more from that. Because when someone does an analysis on something, what are the secret success factors of entrepreneurs, and they only speak to Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, and whatnot, I don't think we learn that much from that. It's more interesting to look at the failures at times.
But at the end of the day, it is very satisfying. I can see those smiles on your face, no?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, not many of us go daily to work and have this feeling of fulfillment, right? I think that is something very, very powerful. And you only realize this if you once you don't have it anymore, right? Or once you have it for the first time. And obviously, that is something which you should be guaranteed if you're an entrepreneur, because otherwise you will not do it.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you very much for your time. Anything else you want to comment on before we end? This has been a very good discussion, Sebastian.
No, just thanks, Sohail, for having me. I mean, see, like in the early days of the what is this conference called in Manila from the ADB, the yearly conference?
Asia Clean Energy Forum, yes.
Exactly. So I heard you speaking there, right? And you already spoke about this distributed energy thing, years before any of that was happening. And but you spoke of that in a context of emerging markets, not in a context of Tesla in San Francisco or anything like that. And that's been a great inspiration. And I was like, oh yeah, the ADB gets it. But then always, of course, a disclaimer. Well, Sohail is a very progressive ADB. It doesn't necessarily always represent the bank's position. But yeah, let's leave that to another side.
No, but we talk about those things. You are actually doing it. This is fantastic. No, thank you.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you for joining us this week. If you haven't done so yet, subscribe to our show. Also, leave your comments and review if you enjoyed today's episode. Follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter at shasni for updates. That's SHASNIE. Once again, this has been Energypreneurs, connecting you to the innovative opportunities in solar power, batteries, and electric vehicles. Stay tuned.